Does something look a little bit different to you? Welcome folks, today I finally have a new camera. That's something great that actually can zoom out pretty far and in. I can actually show you. Wow, wow, wow. But that's not the point of today's video. While this is a great addition and will definitely make my setup look a bit better, and I can finally use my body to kind of push my points at least, which I kind of missed since I got that other lens on my old camera. But today we're going to be talking about new nerfs that have happened and buffs in Vanguard 0 JP. And now this is really interesting because these came out a mere hour or so before the patch actually dropped on Vanguard 0 JP. And this is really interesting because it came without any precedent. There was no announcement beforehand there's going to be like any buffs or nerfs happening. There was no announcement at the end of the Vanguard 0 Championship that, the alarming rate of shadows and Narukami would actually lead to some restrictions. While some people expected it, nobody really thought they would actually act upon it, but they did without saying anything beforehand. And the weirdest part was that some of the nerfs and buffs weren't even like the stuff that they put on their website before updating the game actually didn't match the update. So for example, we had stuff like Tejas that was nerfed, or unnerfed rather. It was unnerfed on the website back to its Vanguard Rearguard Circle skill, but then when the update came out, the nerf wasn't, the buff wasn't there anymore, and it was still the nerf version of just having the rearguard circle effect only. So that was kind of interesting, but anyway, let's switch on over and actually take a look at what these buffs and nerfs were in game. And the camera changing isn't the only change that has happened to this channel. Bam, baby. Let's go. We got transitions. Thank you to my boy Cortrex. Make sure you check him out if you want to get some yourself, if you want to commission him for transition like that. But big thank you to my buddy for making that for me. So I think when I'm just sitting down and talking about Zero stuff, I'll zoom myself in. It does look a little bit better for this kind of setup, but what did they actually change? And, why did this happen? What are my thoughts? That's what we're going to go over in this video. So the first change that happened actually wasn't necessarily a buff or a nerf, but rather a technicality update. So the reason why is that you'll notice we have grade 4s now in Vanguard 0. So grade 4s in the main deck, these aren't strides, and yes, these came out before the Legion era in original TCG Vanguard. These are not strides, these are just main deck grade 4s. They existed in the game as well. So Royals got one, and then also Kagero got, of course, Nouvelle Vague as well. So there's one for Kagero, and on top of that, Great Nature also got one, which I'm sure a lot of you will remember, the Great Nature, that card that actually had an expiration date, which is Sylvest. So 3 grade 4 cards that go in the main deck have been added to Vanguard 0. And so in order to kind of, coincide with that effect, I guess, they basically decided to patch just some effect info. And so some of the effects that they changed are, for example, not Grand Blue, sorry, let me get to Aqua Force right here. So for example, one of the changes that they made is that now Glory Maelstrom says when he attacks and you count loss 2 and give him 5k in a crit, and then your opponent has to, normally before your opponent had to discard a grade 3 randomly from their hand, otherwise they cannot PG. Now you basically get to choose, get to discard randomly still either a grade 3 or higher. So it's grade 3 or higher, so it can include the grade 4s too. So if the Glory player is playing against someone that has Exculpate or playing against someone that has Nouvelle Vague, then they could also get that discarded too. The only other card so far that has some sort of effect when it comes to this skill is actually Pendragon. So his skill now says at the beginning of the main phase, when break 4 Vanguard Circle, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, and you can ride a grade 3 or higher. So it's not just a grade 3, you can also ride a grade 4 from his skill too, which is pretty nice, and I guess is kind of the intended use for this effect too. So those are the only two like small little kind of patch-ups. They then decided to buff a bunch of things in OTT, because OTT got Battle Sister support that just came out, and so they decided to change some things. The first change of which is Fromage. Her second skill used to say Vanguard Circle, if you have 4 more Battle Sister Rearguards, then she gains plus 4k, which was her original skill. Now they changed it to be Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When you have 4 more Battle Sister Rearguards, gain 5k. So she's a 16k beat stick, which is actually pretty nice. And keep in mind, this will also be on your opponent's turn too, if you have the 4 more Rearguards. So that's pretty nice. And also that was kind of like the main nice thing about her before, was that she was like 15k based on the opponent's turn. So now she'll be 16, which is even better. And so that's definitely a really nice and welcome addition. So I definitely think that that's a cool buff that they added. They also changed the grade 1, which is the Battle Sister Kokoa. So this was a rank reward too, and so her skill is Vanguard Rearguard Circle when placed, check the top card of your deck, and then leave it on the top or the bottom. So that's the same as the old effect, but now they also added an extra clause. If that top card that you revealed, that you checked, was a Battle Sister Chocolat, so the old Perfect Guard, then you can add it to your hand. So this only works with the old Perfect Guard. This will not work with the new Tetramagus. This only works with this one. So keep that in mind. That's a very important thing to remember. But of course, for Battle Sister deck, that is pretty good. And for any deck that doesn't rely on Limit Break or Break Riding, that'll definitely be nice. So Battle Sister Kokoi definitely got a buff just out of that alone. And so basically, once this comes to the Tournament Exchange Shop, so in JP we get this next month, I think, where she comes to the Tournament Exchange Shop because they keep bringing back the old rank rewards into the Tournament Exchange. And so we're going to get this next month, and definitely going to be worth to pick up until you have a playset, because that's a really good buff for OTT as a whole. Then one of the other clans that was supported was Dark Irregulars, and the change that we got was Reiji, actually. So Reiji now got a third skill. So his third skill says, Vanguard Circle, when he attacks the Vanguard, Soul Charge 1, and for that battle, gain plus 1k. And hey, Diego, that happens sometimes where I'm recording a video and then a Twitch notification will pop up, so thank you for that follow. But, so this is a really nice skill because this basically means that not only is it fulfilling his own condition of 15 soul better, it is also giving you that extra little bit of power that you can kind of push through when you have strong rear guards, etc. So I think the soul charge is definitely the nicer part about this skill, but it's definitely very nice. I've actually lost to this deck once already where the opponent had 14 soul and I was like, oh, I'm fine. And then he goes attack, get the 15th soul, and then gets +2 crit, and I died. So yeah, that can happen. The other change to this guy was that his Vanguard Circle when placed skills also changed. So before, it was just when you ride it, you choose a rear guard, search your deck for up to 3 copies of that rear guard, and put it into your soul. Now they changed it so that you basically ride him, and then you can target a rear guard and search your deck and or your drop zone for up to 4 copies of, or for up to 3 copies, sorry, of that unit and put it into your soul. So if you, for example, have like 1 in the deck, but you have a few in the drop zone, you can still like, you know, combine them to put up to 3 into your soul, which is really nice and helps you to fulfill that condition. So that's also very, very cool. And so for example, if you had like, you rode a Dimension Creeper and then you called one, you could have like Soul Blasted one of the Dimension Creepers and then target it when you ride it to then still be able to, you know, put them back into the soul. So that's also very nice. So that's the changes that they added to Dark Irregulars in terms of buffs. And then finally, the other clan that they buffed up was Great Nature. So Great Nature, Leopold got a really, really, really big buff actually. This one is Limit Break 4 once per turn, Counterblast 1. This used to be that for that turn you choose a rear guard and give it the skill that during the end phase when it is retired, you can call that rear guard back to the same rear guard circle it was originally on. Now it says, once per turn Limit Break, Counterblast 1. For that turn, give all of your rear guards, all of them, the skill that when they are retired in the end phase, you can call that card to any empty rearguard circle. So the empty part doesn't really matter too much because, you know, if you're retiring everything's going to be empty, so you can just recall them to the same spots anyway. But if you wanted to like reorganize your grade 1s in the back or your grade 2s or whatever, if you had like a grade 2 in the back row for whatever reason and you want to suddenly call it to the front, you know, you have that kind of option if you retire that many cards. So it's definitely a really cool buff, definitely really, really nice. And so Leopold, you know, together with the new support of Leopold Reverse and Chat Noir, that's definitely going to be super cool as well. So those were the buffs. You know, buffs aren't something that is too different. You know, they've done this before. Like for example, when Great Dayusha was coming out, they gave Dayusha a whole new skill of like being able to, you know, remove himself from game from the hand. So that's not something that's entirely new. That's something that people are quite used to. But this is where the nerfs come in. They decided to start nerfing cards, and this is clearly targeting the most popular decks and clans from basically from the Vanguard Zero Championship, but also making some hits that feel a little bit unnecessary. Let's just put it that way. So a little spoiler in my opinion there. So sadly it's not Genesis, but let's start with Kagero. They decided to hit, let's go to grade zeros, decided to hit the Gatling Claw Dragon. So what this card says now, what it used to say before was it's a Forerunner, and then rearguard circle combos 1, put it into the soul, and choose one of your opponent's grade 0 rearguards and retire it. So it was a starter sniper, and you only ran it if there was a really pesky starter, like Wingle Brave for example, and so otherwise you would run Conroe, right? So instead now he says combos 1, put him into the soul, choose an opponent's grade 1 rearguard, and retire it. So this kind of sets the pattern that this is a starter that wasn't really used to begin with, but they decided to change the effect like this, which means that they don't want starter hate. They want decks that revolve on their starter to work. So, you know, you can think of Silver Thorns, you can think of like Nubatama coming up, all kinds of stuff that really revolves around the starter, or like Dungaree, for example. They want those decks to stay alive without starter sniping. And so this isn't the first effect that they did like this. This isn't the only one. So what they also did was, of course, add it to Narukami, because Narukami has 2 starters like that. So, of course, Linchu, everyone's favorite Eradicator starter, also got changed. So His skill now is, well, beforehand it was when he boosted an Eradicator and the attack hits a Vanguard, combos 1, put him into the soul, and retire any of your opponent's rear guards. So that was of course really nice because not only could you kill starters, you could also hit their other rears, so like grade 2s in the back or whatever. But now he says, you know, same condition, but then combos 1, put him into the soul, and choose one of your opponent's grade 1 or higher rear guards. So specifically still allowing you to have freedom over the other grades, but grade 0s, those don't get touched. So starters cannot kill starters, and that is just that's it. And then, of course, for Narukami, it's not over yet because Saishin also got hit. And I think Saishin got off worst here because his skill now says, if the boosted attack hit a Vanguard, combos 1, put him into the soul, and retire one of your opponent's grade 1 rear guards. So you don't even get the freedom that Linchu gives you of like grade 1 and higher. It's only grade 1s, whereas before it was grade 1 or less. So you could kill starters, and you could hit grade 1s like Doreen that are really annoying. Or not Doreen, Dorant. So this is also pretty big. Like this starter was already not being used that much, but hitting it like this just feels even worse, and I feel like that was just not necessary at all, to be hitting it like this outside of if their goal is to kill starter hitters. So if they don't want anything that can hit a starter, then that makes sense. But these were the only 3 things that they nerfed that hit starters. Keep in mind that there's cards like Blaster Dark Revenger, Blaster Blade Liberator, and the blasters in general that have the ability to kill starters. Like, you can still call a Blaster Dark Revenger and kill a starter with it. Like, that doesn't change anything. But they decided to just make it so that starters can't kill starters, and I don't know, it's a little bit strange. I feel like I understand hitting this, for example, as like a way to also hit Eradicators as a clan, as a deck, because, you know, of course this is a very popular deck that basically everyone was piloting in the Vanguard Zero Championship Finals, but I don't know if this was... I mean, I guess this is a fine way to hit it, but I don't think it'll even make that much of a difference either, so that's another point for concern. Now, let's go over the 2 other hits that remain, one of them being Shadows. Claudus. So Claudus is a Revenger starter, and if you watch my Revenger deck and fight, I already said that Goat is better. Why is Goat good? Goat is just an Eric, so combos 1, put him into the soul, look at top 5 for grade 3. This is good because sometimes you don't have Mordred, you get yourself a Mordred, that's the break ride. Sometimes you don't have Raging Form Dragon. Raging Form Dragon needs a Persona Blast copy, so having a second one is always great. So Goat is great for those reasons. But a lot of people ran Claudus because his original effect said, Rearguard Circle, if your Vanguard's a grade 3 or higher, combos 1 and put him into the soul to search your deck for Blaster Dark Revenger and call it. So you would use this to counterblast 1, put him in the soul, call Blaster Dark Revenger in front of a Doran, then Doran refunds that counterblast, and then Blaster Dark Revenger counterblast 2 to kill something. So that was kind of like the main reason you would play it, because Doran would instantly refund the Claudus's cost, and you would be able to get a retire out of it. So that's obviously quite nice, that you can just tech a retire and also tech a intercept, which of course was pretty good. They decided to nerf this by making it so that his cost is now counterblast 2. And that... So, first things first, that's a huge hit for the starter as a whole. Is it a hit to Revengers? For the people that use Claudus, yes. For the people that use Goat, not at all. It's the same as it was before. But for the people that use Claudus, in my opinion, this starter is barely usable, because now you are paying Counterblast 3 to call a Blaster Dark and retire while having a Doran. If not, it's Counterblast 4. So you never want to do that. And Counterblast 3 is already pretty expensive. Like, keep in mind, you want to use your Tar2 like almost every turn if possible. You're using the main, you're using the Blaster Dark Revenger. Like, you are counterblasting for quite a lot of things, and like Darkbond Trumpeter, like all these things that I don't think you have the counterblast anymore to use Claudus, so you're better off just running the Goat. And the thing is that in Japan, for some reason, people still run Claudus even after the restriction, whereas the like English-speaking community that plays 0JP, you know, has switched to Claudus ages ago. So it's a big hit. This definitely will hit the Revenger builds that didn't run Goat, but anyone that plays Goat, literally, it doesn't change anything. So I feel like, again, if they wanted to hit Revengers, this isn't really the way. It won't really make a big change in the overall grand scheme of things. And now this final hit is by far the one that people find themselves most confused by, which is a Link Joker hit, which is to Dusttail Unicorn. So Dusttail Unicorn is like one of the most iconic Starvader starters of all time, really, because this starter was, you know, the way that you could break ride and still do like the V-lock of, you know, like 2 front rows and a back row together with your break ride. So before his effect was, so Forerunner and then Rearguard Circle, if your opponent has a locked card, counterblast 1, put him into the soul, choose any of your opponent's rearguards and lock it. What does he say now? Well, now he says, if your opponent has a locked card, counterblast 1, put him into the soul, and then you get to choose one of your opponent's back row rear guards and lock it. Why? What? why? Why was this necessary? Like, are they that afraid of putting in front row locking? You know, because I already talked about this. I already talked about this plenty of times. Current Link Joker doesn't feel that crazy. Current Link Joker with Nebula Lord and Infinite Zero just isn't that impressive, because if you don't break ride, you don't get front row locks. If you don't use Schwarzschild, you don't get front row locks. Like, the only way to like do front row locks was if your opponent misplayed and you got like a Singularity Sniper or something going on. But like, it was just like Dusttail Unicorn that you would get those front row locks with if you didn't break ride, because then you could use Nebula Lord to lock a back row and then use this to lock a front row. Or if you went with the break ride route, you get a front row and a back row and then another front row. So that was like kind of the win condition of Link Joker as a whole. So what this tells a lot of people is that they are doing this because they might not want to hit Chaos Breaker as hard and keep it intact as much as possible, because rather than pissing off the Chaos Breaker fans by nerfing the card, like they've annoyed quite a few of the Nouvelle Vague fans, Nouvelle Vague, but instead maybe they want to just hit the starter and let Chaos be a bit stronger. But because Chaos's lock is once per turn, and if it's unchanged, it will be able to lock the front row too, then that way at least you won't be able to get multiple front row locks of, like, you know, use Chaos to lock a front row, use Dusttail Unicorn to lock a front row. That would be pretty insane. But maybe that's the reason. But if that is the reason, why didn't they wait, you know, an extra month? If we're assuming that Chaos Breaker releases next month, why didn't they wait another month to implement that? Because that seems kind of strange, because right now Link Joker is already considered a tier 2 clan by the majority of the competitive community, and so why would you hit a tier 2 deck that already relies on the starter pretty hard? Like, right now you have no reason not to run the Schwarzschild right chain. Like, you might as well run the right chain, and at least, you know, you get an early lock and you get to search your deck and all that kind of stuff. Dusttail Unicorn just doesn't feel worth it anymore, and that's just very interesting, to put it lightly. So yeah, it's a peculiar move, that's all I'll really give it. And overall, these nerfs have been very, very interesting. You know, the buffs have been welcome. I think I'm always welcoming buffs to decks that are not played as much. Like Battle Sisters has never really been a popular deck, so that getting buffs is really good. I think even with the buffs, it's not going to change anything in terms of the meta. And Reiji as well, you know, players are saying it feels much better to play it now with that extra Soul Charge it gets, so that's also really nice. And then Leopold is a card that you wouldn't ride that much to begin with, because you'd rather go Chat Noir into Polaris or Chat Noir into Leopold Reverse. So the fact that they, you know, gave that a buff, it's great. It's great. Buffs are always nice when they're buffing the right things, and so far they've always given buffs to the things that deserve buffs. Now the nerfs, I understand that they don't like starter hate. I think it overall makes a more healthy game, because that way you can play decks without being afraid that, you know, the deck that relies on a starter will just get shunned out by these popular decks that can kill your starter. So I think for that reason, they can still let people enjoy Eradicators by taking away the you know, starter retire, and, you know, not nerfing Eradicators to the point that they're unplayable. So I think that it's overall healthy for the game. So all of those things are pretty healthy. I'm most concerned about this, the Dusttail Unicorn. I think this one is a little bit too much. I think that they pushed it a little bit, or at least they could have waited until Chaos releases and then dropped it, and everyone would be like, okay, this makes sense. Now we don't even know what Chaos will do. And because of that uncertainty, it's very much like, well, I can't really play Link Joker for this month, because, or you can, but it just won't be as strong as it was the previous month where it released. It's just kind of strange. So yeah, weird move. And Colossus was also a little bit of a confusing one as well, just because, I don't know, I mean, to a lot of people, like, Japanese community all basically use the Colossus, but for a lot of people, Creeping Dark Code has already been the better starter for a while, so it feels a little bit strange. But yeah, so that is definitely interesting. So those were the nerfs and buffs that came to JP format, and, you know, the last time we had nerfs, I think, was Tejas, so that was half a year ago. So it's definitely been a long time, and, you know, it's definitely nice that we get some kind of nerfs and buffs, but they definitely felt like they were very sudden, and a lot of people are hoping that in the future, when they do this, we at least get some kind of, you know, word in advance that they're gonna be hitting some stuff in general. But yeah, so that's kind of my stance on these nerfs. And we're back. So yeah, that was my kind of discussion of this entire buff and nerf thing going on. And so yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments too. What do you think of them hitting these decks, you know, hitting the starter hate? I think it's overall a good thing that it makes it so that a lot of decks that rely on their starters don't have to get bullied as much, and there's more and more of those decks coming out in the future too. So I think it's overall a good move from their part, but it's just the Dusttail and the Colossus that are really a little bit confusing at this stage of the game. But that's basically going to be it for me today. Before I do head off, I would like to just mention that I do stream on Twitch all the time, 3 times a week at the very least, and we very often do Vanguard Zero streams too. So if you want to support my stream as well, I would really recommend if you guys just drop a follow. We're trying to hit 10k followers before the end of the year, and we're getting closer and closer to it, so I'm trying to not give up on that goal. So if you'd like to show some support to you know, what I do in general, I would really appreciate if you give us a look on Twitch as well. But on that note, that's basically going to be it for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments as well, what you think of the nerfs and the buffs and everything like that. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.